I used to be part of the swim team, but now I'm so scared of the water that I can't even get into a kid's pool. Do you want to know what happened? No worries. A few winters ago, my friend Seiji invited me over to his place. It was already past 10 at night. It was Saturday the next day and I didn't have any work, so I obliged. Seiji was a player and he was constantly in some kind of mess. He was also self-centered, so he only had a few friends. As I made my way to his place, I was prepared to be pulled into some kind of drama again. When I got there, he threw me a bunch of clothes and was told we were going to go night fishing. I told him I only needed a coat, but he said to get changed so that my clothes don't get dirty. Considering his personality, I was somewhat humbled by his thoughtfulness. We're similar in stature, so they fit me perfectly. I even put on his hat, and the person looking back at me in the mirror's reflection looked exactly like Seiji that it felt a bit strange. 30 minutes into the car ride, we finally reached what looked like a swamp. I don't know much about fishing, so I just followed Seiji's lead. We sat there in silence, and I just stared at the float which was reflected in the moonlight bobbing in the water. I was already bored. It was weird to be called out this late at night just to go fishing, so Seiji must have been pretty bored himself. So I asked him, "Where's your girlfriend?" Whenever the weekend approached, he was always spending time with his girlfriend. The most recent one seemed to be all over him, so even more so. "Right. About that," he replied in a rather serious tone. "Do you, believe in ghosts?" As usual, he ignored my question and asked me his own. Honestly, I didn't believe in ghosts or monsters or anything related to that realm, so that's what I told him. He laughed and said, "That's why I called you out tonight," and he started to tell me something that I really wasn't interested in at all. He said, "My girlfriend, she killed herself. We went to the beach together and we got into a huge fight. She was hysterical and I got so pissed off, so I left her there and came back by myself. As soon as I got home, I had a phone call from the police. She'd apparently written a suicide note with my name and phone number and jumped into the ocean. Some fishermen nearby saw everything and they called the police, but they couldn't find her. Her body was finally found a week ago. Apparently, she'd been in the water for about 10 days, and since then, when I fill my bathtub, I see her face. If I look at a river, she's staring at me. Now, even when I look into my miso soup, I see her face. It seems like anywhere there's liquid, she's there." I burst out laughing. Seems like even a guy like him can feel somewhat of a remorse and have a guilty conscience. I mean, if ghosts really do exist, shouldn't he have seen her from the moment she died? I said as much, and Seiji also laughed as he replied, "So, you're not scared, right? 'Cause she's actually here right now too." And he pointed into the water's edge a few meters from where we were. Of course I wasn't scared. "Here?" I said as I got up and walked up to where he was pointing. Seiji also got up and followed behind me, almost trying to hide himself behind my back. "Don't tell me you're scared," I said. I'd never seen him like this and it was actually a bit funny. He was mumbling near my ear saying, she had pretty bad eyesight. She couldn't see anything without her contacts. Just then, I felt a hard shove in my back and I fell into the swamp. Luckily, it was quite shallow where I fell, only about 30 centimeters, but I fell on my ass. "What the hell?" I yelled. I stood up, and as I was trying to climb back onto the shore, I felt like something was tangled around my ankle. I tried to shake my leg free, thinking it was some rope or other trash, but my leg wouldn't budge. Seiji started laughing and hollering, "Sorry, bro." Whatever was around my ankle started to climb up my leg. I looked down, and in the moonlight, I could make out a hand. It looked like it had blisters all over it. My mind went blank, and I couldn't let out a single sound. The hand continued to make its way up, and just as it got to my waist, I saw the head poking out of the water. I'd met Seiji's girlfriend before she died, but this looked nothing like her. She was trying to pull me into the water. I tried to call out for help, but when I looked back up, Seiji was gone, and then I heard the sound of the car engine getting fainter. By this time, she was out of the water and was literally on me, trying to drag me in. I'm gonna die. She's gonna kill me. Just then, I finally got my control back and I heard in my ear, "You're gonna leave me again." I could hear it so clearly, but I couldn't feel any breath. "Take me with you," it said. It smelled like raw fish. My entire body was freezing, almost as if I'd jumped into an ice bath. I made my way out of that swamp, but don't remember how I got home. When I came to, I was in the entrance of my house crying like a baby. I took off my clothes and stuffed them into the bin. They were soaked through and through. I took the hottest shower I could tolerate, but my back remained freezing. I got into my futon, but I was still freezing and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't take it anymore, and I jumped into my car and sped towards Seiji's house. I guess he wasn't in a normal state either, because his door wasn't locked. As soon as I opened the door, I felt like whatever was on my back suddenly slipped off. "Hey, Seiji!" I called out. He appeared from the back room a bit unsteady on his feet, and when he saw me, the color drained from his face. Wait, but there's no water. I smelled that fishy smell from behind me again. I didn't want to stay there a single second more, and I felt like I should get out of there. I closed my eyes and pushed Seiji as hard as I could. I almost tripped and fell over as I ran back to my car. The next day, I called a few of my friends and went back to see Seiji. If he was dead, I'd probably be the first to be accused. I let my friends go first. His door was still unlocked. My friends called out to him, but there was no response. "We're coming in," they called out. I remained outside. "Seiji! Hey, you okay?" I knew it, I thought to myself when I heard their panicked voices. I sighed as I blamed myself for being so stupid as to get caught up in his mess until the very end. "Yo, what's wrong with him? Hey Seiji, do you know who I am?" Something was wrong. It didn't sound like he was dead at all. I swallowed and went into his apartment. There he was, surrounded by the others, just sitting and giggling non-stop. His eyes were open, but they weren't looking at anything in particular. He was completely zoned out. It looked like someone had poured water on him because he was soaked from head to toe. "Seiji, you okay?" We kept trying to get him to snap out of it, but he continued giggling. We gave up and stood there watching him. And then I felt it again. Something was behind me, and I could smell it. "Thank you," it whispered into my ear. Ever since then, I haven't been able to go to the beach or pool. That's all from me today. Good night. According to the law, or something rather, any building taller than 5 or 6 floors have to have elevators installed. So the apartment I used to live in next to the highway also had one. I lived on the 6th floor, so I rarely ever used the stairs, but I guess that's normal. I use the elevators every single day. Walking down the stairs isn't too bad, but going up, it's not the easiest. But ever since what happened, I only use the stairs now. I was still a uni student at the time, and one afternoon, around 12, on my day off, I decided to go to the convenience store to grab some lunch. The elevator was up on the 8th floor and seemed like someone was in the middle of getting in or getting off. I pressed the going down button and waited. When it got to my floor, the doors opened and an elderly woman was standing inside. I'd seen her a few times before, so I figured she was living on the 8th floor. I gave her a bow to say hello and got in. The button to the 1st floor was already pressed. It made its way down and stopped again on the 4th floor. The door opened and a delivery man came in. The elevator started moving again, but it stopped somewhere between the 2nd and 3rd floors. I felt a slight gravitational pull as the elevator came to a stop and the 3 of us looked at each other. What the hell? Did it break down? It didn't seem like the power went out because the light in the elevator was still on. That's weird, I muttered out loud. The old lady and the delivery man looked equally anxious. We all waited for a while, but the elevator didn't look like it was going to move anymore. The delivery man pressed the emergency button. No answer. He let out a sigh. "What's going on?" he said, as if he read my mind. The silence continued for about 3 minutes, but it felt a lot longer than that. The short 3 minutes was enough to get all of our heart rates up, and I could see that we were all starting to feel a bit afraid and stressed. Just then, the elevator started to move again. The old lady let out a gasp, and the sudden movement also scared me. Even though the only button pressed was for the first floor, the elevator went upwards. It passed the 4th floor, the 5th, and the 6th floors, and stopped on the 7th. The door opened. I looked at the door suspiciously as it opened. The old woman said, "It looks like the elevator's in need of some maintenance," as she walked out. "You're right about that," said the delivery man as he followed her out onto the 7th floor. That much was obvious, and I wholeheartedly agreed. We were lucky the elevator moved and opened its doors again. At least we could walk out of it. If the elevator got stuck again, we might be left in there for God knows how long. It might even end up in injury if things got worse. There's no way I wanted to risk it. So, naturally, I decided to follow the two. But hold on a second. Something's off. I looked out into the hall. It was definitely my building, but it was really dark. None of the lights were on. I couldn't even see to the end of the hallway. That's how dark it was. So maybe the power was out after all. I turned around to look at the elevator, and the light in the elevator was shining so bright it looked like it belonged in a whole different world. Right. The elevator's working, so there's no way the power's out. Something's definitely wrong. I looked out from the 7th floor. The sky was red. Is it sunrise? Is it sunset? Impossible. It's only around midday right now. There was no sun and not a single cloud. The red color was so bright that it made my heart skip a beat. Next, I peered down onto the streets. It was dark. No, it was actually pitch black. I could only see the dark outline of other buildings. There wasn't a single light anywhere. Not only that, we could always hear the sound of traffic from this building because it was right next to the highway, but it was dead silent. I couldn't hear a single thing, let alone see any movement down below. I don't really know how to explain it, but it felt like there was nothing living out there. I could just see the bright red sky and pitch dark world below. I turned around again to look at the elevator. The light was shining bright, and as I stood there trying to make sense of things, the door started to close. Shit. Should I stay here or get back in? I quickly walked back into the elevator. The doors closed and made its way down to the 1st floor without a hitch. When the doors opened, I saw the usual sight. People walking, cars driving past, the sound of life. It was noon and the sun was bright. I'd never felt more relieved in my life. I instinctively thought everything was okay now as I walked off the elevator. After my heart rate came back down, I couldn't help but wonder about the two that got off on the 7th floor, so I went to the stairs and decided to wait for them to come down. I waited for about 15 minutes, but they didn't show up. There's no way it would take them longer than that. I got really scared and left the building. I didn't want to stay there anymore. Ever since that day, I stopped taking elevators because they scare me. I've moved to a different apartment complex. Stairs are safe. Stairs are safe because it's connected to the ground. But elevators are different. They might lead you to another world. At least that's how I feel. I will never get on another elevator ever again. I had a school reunion the other day, and a certain topic came up that I wanted to share with you. I'm from a small coastal town, and the beach was a 2-minute walk from my home. This beach was a bit dangerous because it would suddenly drop off and get deep, so swimming was prohibited in this area. There was a pretty popular and safer beach just 2 train stops away, so hardly anyone came to this one, even though the sand was nice and the water was pretty alright. I was born and raised in that town, so I really liked this particular beach, but since that happened, the story I'm about to tell you now, I'm scared of it. I'm scared of all beaches, in fact, and especially at night. This happened just before summer break when I was still in elementary school. On this particular day, I'd made plans with a bunch of friends to do some fireworks at the beach. Within this group was a girl. Her name was Hiroko, and she was petite and pale. I was too young to understand at the time, but she had some issues within her family, and she was living alone with her grandmother. My mum was always super nice and understanding, but every time I told her I'd be playing with Hiroko, her face got cloudy. Apparently, Hiroko's dad was known around town as a troublemaker. I found out quite a while later that he had gambling issues, drank a lot, and was a womanizer. He sometimes showed up in the middle of the night yelling and just being a nuisance to everyone around him. My mum knew all of this, so thinking back now, I guess she was worried about me if I played too much with Hiroko. For this reason, I lied to my mum about my plans that night. I only told her that I was meeting up with some friends to do fireworks, and I didn't mention anybody by name. That night, sometime past 8 p.m. It was dark, so I couldn't see them, but I made my way over to them by following the sounds. I could also see their dim silhouettes against the night sky. When I got there, everyone seemed like they were in somewhat of a rush to start the fireworks and started lighting them up straight away. I looked around and didn't see Hiroko anywhere, but figured she was running late just like me and joined in on the fun. Fireworks with just us kids. It was so exciting and so much fun. I guess my friends all felt the same way, and we were all hyper and making a lot of noise. After a while, we had used up all the handheld fireworks and we were left with the rocket types, and Hiroko hadn't arrived yet. I didn't want to carry on with the main event without Hiroko and told my friends that we should wait for her, but they all said that she probably wasn't coming anyway. Considering it was pretty late already, I agreed and we all took the last rocket fireworks and made our way to the edge of the water. Rocket fireworks. Have you ever seen them before? They only last for a few seconds, but they're beautiful as they light up the surrounding areas. From a kid's point of view, it actually catches your breath from the beautiful but short-lived spray of fire in the air. I couldn't wait to see it go up. We lit one and saw it launch into the air with that distinct whistling sound. I was chasing the light as it shot into the air and it lit up the ocean at the same time. That's when I saw it. There was something in the water. In that instant, I think everyone else saw it too. We were all standing side by side and staring off into the sea in silence. Only the sound of the waves could be heard. The thing that was floating in the water was Hiroko. She was floating, bobbing up and down with the waves, her face facing upwards. It was weird, because she was pretty far out, and it was pitch black. But somehow we all knew what, or rather who, it was. None of us screamed or let out a sound. None of us looked away. We just stared at her body floating silently in the distance. The next day, we heard from our teacher that Hiroko was missing. I found out later that all of my friends who were there that night had also withheld information about Hiroko joining us for the fireworks. None of us told anyone that she was there, and we never spoke with each other about it either. It was really scary to even think about it, and it felt like it was a taboo subject to bring up. Hiroko was never found, and summer came to an end. School started back again, and it seemed like people didn't care as much that she was missing anymore. Her quiet and timid existence was already fading in people's memories. There was a rumor going around between the mums that Hiroko's dad had something to do with her disappearance. During a reunion recently, I met up with one of the friends that was there that night. She got a bit drunk and started crying as she told me the following. She walked into the water when we all told her to go home. Hiroko walked in, all by herself. I can still remember, to this day, her body bobbing up and down and the look on everyone's faces as they stared out at the black water. I don't think I could ever forget.